Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chronicles of the Shitter, an auditory and olfactory odyssey through human waste. It is the one throne from which no monarch can abdicate, the one daily appointment that no CEO can reschedule, and the one biological imperative that has leveled empires, humiliated astronauts, and literally reshaped the geography of our cities. We are about to embark on a journey that is equal parts fascinating, horrifying, and frankly, disgusting. We are peeling back the porcelain curtain to reveal the sticky, smelly, and often explosive history of how humanity has dealt with its own byproducts. This is not a polite history. If you are eating, you might want to stop. We are going to talk about shitting in all its historical glory. From the communal wipe sticks of ancient Rome to the vacuum-sealed rectums of the International Space Station. We will explore why you sit, or squat, the way you do, why women were historically chained to their homes by their bladders, and why, for a brief, terrifying moment in 1999, a music festival turned into a literal cesspool of trenchmouth. We will use the proper technical terminology, which for the purposes of this documentary is the shitter. Whether it's a gold-plated commode or a hole in the ground, if you poop in it, it's a shitter. The room it's in, the bog, the dunny, the thunderbox. We will not shy from the gross. We will embrace it. For in the story of the shitter lies the story of us, naked, vulnerable, and usually looking for something to read.
The social shitter of antiquity. The Roman foricai, networking on the bench. Imagine, if you will, the bustling streets of ancient Rome. The year is 100 AD. You've just finished a heavy meal of dormant dormice and garum, fermented fish sauce, and nature is calling. You don't rush home to a private sanctuary. You head to the foricai, the public shitter. To the modern Western mind, the bathroom is a temple of solitude. We lock the door, turn on the fan, and pretend we aren't doing what we are doing. The Romans had no such shame. The Roman public shitter was a social hub, a place of commerce, gossip, and networking. Picture a long stone bench, often made of marble, lining 3 walls of a room. Cut into this bench every few feet are keyhole-shaped openings. There are no dividers, no stalls, no occupied signs sliding from green to red. You walk in, hike up your tunic, or toga if you're fancy, though the elite usually had private shitters at home, and sit down thigh to thigh with a complete stranger. To your left, a merchant is complaining about the price of olive oil. To your right, a soldier is groaning about his dysentery. The acoustic landscape is a symphony of strained grunts, the rustle of fabric, and the splash of waste hitting the water channel that flows continuously beneath the seats. This was the Roman water closet, in its most literal sense. They used excess water from the aqueducts and baths to flush the trenches beneath the benches, carrying the waste out into the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer of Rome. It was an engineering marvel that kept the streets relatively clean, at least compared to what came later. But the social aspect is what boggles the modern mind. The shitter was an equalizer. You could be sitting next to a philosopher or a fishmonger. It was the Facebook of the ancient world, but everyone was actually producing content.
The xylospongium, the brush with death. Now we must address the elephant in the room, or rather, the sponge on the stick. Toilet paper is a relatively modern luxury, and we'll get to the Chinese invention of it later. The Romans, however, had the xylospongium, also known as the tersorium. This device is exactly what it sounds like, a sea sponge attached to the end of a wooden stick. It was the communal ass wiper of the empire. Let that sink in. Communal. Here is the procedure. You finish your business. You reach down into a bucket of water, sometimes salt water, sometimes vinegar if they were feeling hygienic, and grab the stick. You wipe. Then you rinse the sponge in the running water channel at your feet, the runnel. Give it a swish in the vinegar bucket and leave it for the next guy. The microbiological implications are horrifying. The xylospongium was a perfect vector for every intestinal parasite known to man. Whipworm, roundworm, dysentery, it was a buffet of bacteria passed from rectum to rectum. The Romans didn't understand germ theory. They thought bad smells, miasma, caused disease, not invisible bugs. So while they scrubbed their bodies in the baths, they were effectively inoculating themselves with their neighbor's poop every time they visited the shitter. The xylospongium wasn't just gross, it could be deadly. The Roman philosopher Seneca the Younger tells a grim story of a Germanic gladiator who, desperate to avoid the slaughter of the arena, went to the latrine. Finding no weapon to kill himself, he grabbed the stick with a sponge attached for wiping the unmentionables and rammed it down his throat, suffocating himself. It is a stark reminder that for many, death by a fecal-covered sponge was preferable to fighting a lion.
Gods of the latrine. The Roman shitter was a dark, damp, and often scary place. Methane buildup could cause explosions. Yes, really. And rats and vermin could crawl up the pipes to bite your exposed nether regions. To combat these terrors, the Romans didn't use safety inspections. They used magic. Latrines were often decorated with frescoes of gods. Fortuna, the goddess of luck, was a popular choice. You need luck when trusting a communal sponge. Isis was also invoked. An inscription in a latrine at the baths of the seven sages in Ostia reads, Cacator Cave Malam, which translates to, Shitter, beware the evil. They literally prayed for a safe poop. And given the state of the xylospongium, they probably needed it.
Chapter 2. The Medieval Miasma and the Castle Shitter.
The Guardrobe, a drafty throne. As the Roman Empire fell, so did the aqueducts. The water stopped flowing, the sewers clogged, and Europe entered the dark ages of sanitation. For the next 1,000 years, the shitter became a much simpler and much smellier affair. If you were lucky enough to be nobility living in a castle, you used the guardrobe. This was essentially a stone bench built into the thickness of the castle wall, protruding out over the moat or a cesspit. A hole was cut in the stone and gravity did the rest. The name guardrobe is fascinating. It comes from the French garde, to protect, and robe, clothing. Why? Because people would hang their clothes in the toilet shaft. The ammonia fumes rising from the urine and rotting excrement below were so pungent that they would kill fleas, lice, and moths on the garments. Your shitter was your dry cleaner. Imagine going to a royal ball and the king smells faintly of eau de toilette, literally. The experience of the guardrobe was largely weather dependent. In the summer, the smell would waft up the shaft. In the winter, the stack effect would turn the toilet hole into a wind tunnel, blasting freezing air onto the royal underside. This is where we get the concept of blowback. In severe storms, the wind could be strong enough to blow the waste back up the chute. And then there were the visuals. In the winter, the waste falling down the side of the castle wall would freeze, creating massive poop stalagmites or brown icicles that could reach halfway up the wall. Pity the poor servant whose job it was to hack those down when the thaw came. The gong farmer, heroes of the night. For the common folk in the cities, there were no stone chutes over moats. There were cesspits, holes in the cellar or backyard where the waste accumulated. When these pits filled up, and they always did, you called the gong farmer. The term gong comes from the Old English gang, meaning to go. These were the men who went where no one else wanted to go. They were the nightmen. By law, in many cities, they could only work between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. because the smell of their work was so offensive it would ruin the day for everyone else. A gong farmer's job description is the stuff of nightmares. They would have to climb into the cesspit, often waist-deep or neck-deep in months-old human sludge, and shovel it into buckets. These buckets were then handed up to a partner, loaded onto a cart, and driven out of the city limits to be sold as fertilizer, night soil. The pay was actually quite good. It was the hazard pay of the medieval era. Gong farmers could earn in a night what a laborer earned in a week, but the risks were immense. The vapors, methane and hydrogen sulfide, could knock a man unconscious in seconds. If you passed out in a cesspit, you drowned in shit. There are parish records of gong farmers dying this way, their lungs filled with the filth they were trying to remove. They were the unsung heroes of medieval urbanism. Without them, the cities would have literally drowned in waste. The myth of Gardyloo. You've probably heard the story. Medieval people just threw their chamber pots out the window into the street, shouting, Gardyloo, a corruption of the French garde l'eau, watch out for the water. Is it true? Yes and no. It certainly happened, especially in overcrowded cities like Edinburgh, which was known as Old Reeky, Old Smelly, for a reason. The tenements were tall, and carrying a pot of urine down 10 flights of stairs was a hassle. So, out the window it went. However, it wasn't a free-for-all. There were laws against it. The Nastiness Act in Scotland, which, wonderfully, has never been repealed, tried to stop it. People were fined for dumping during the day. But at night, all bets were off. The streets were open sewers. Pedestrians wore pattens, wooden overshoes on raised iron rings to keep their expensive leather shoes out of the muck that coated the cobblestones.
Gardyloo!
The Gardyloo shout was a courtesy, a brief warning before the rain of urine began. If you heard it, you didn't look up. You ran.
Chapter 3. The Royal Rear and the Groom of the Stool.
The most intimate job in history. In the Tudor court of Henry VIII, power wasn't just about armies or gold. It was about proximity. And no one was closer to the king than the groom of the stool. This was an official title. The stool referred to the close stool, a velvet-covered box containing a pewter or ceramic pot that served as the king's portable shitter. The groom was the man responsible for the king's egestion. His duties were specific and intimate. He carried the stool. He provided the water, the towel, and the wash bowl. He stood by while the king did his business. He monitored the consistency, color, and frequency of the royal turds, reporting this vital data to the royal physicians, as the state of the king's bowels was a matter of national security. Did he wipe the king's bottom? Historians debate this. Some say yes, it was the ultimate act of service. Others say he merely handed the king the cloth. Regardless, the intimacy of the act gave the groom immense power. Think about it. When is a man most vulnerable? When is he a captive audience? When he is on the shitter. The groom of the stool could whisper in the king's ear, ask for favors, suggest appointments, or badmouth rivals, all while the monarch was otherwise occupied. The power of the pot. The men who held this role, like Sir William Compton and Sir Henry Norris, became incredibly wealthy and powerful. They were the gatekeepers. If you wanted to see the king, you often had to go through the guy who wiped his butt. They were given the king's old clothes, which were worth a fortune, lodgings in every palace, and the king's ear. The role was so gendered that when Elizabeth I took the throne, the political structure of the court had to change. She couldn't have a man in her privy chamber, so she appointed a chief gentlewoman of the privy chamber. The male courtiers were furious. They had lost their access to the seat of power, pun intended. It wasn't until the Victorian era that the role finally disappeared, evolving into the groom of the stole, a ceremonial role that involved dressing the monarch rather than toileting them. But for centuries, the path to political greatness in England ran directly through the bathroom.
Chapter 4. The Great Flush Mythos and the S-Bend Revolution.
Sir John Harington, the godson, and the Ajax. We often credit Thomas Crapper with inventing the flush toilet. This is a lie. The true father of the flush is Sir John Harington, a saucy poet and godson to Queen Elizabeth I. In 1596, Harington was exiled from court for translating a racy Italian poem. Bored at his country estate, he decided to tackle the problem of the stinking privy. He invented a device he called the Ajax, a pun on a jakes, the slang for a toilet. It had a cistern of water above, a pipe, and a valve. When you pulled the handle, water rushed down and flushed the waste away. He built one for himself and one for Queen Elizabeth at Richmond Palace. She reportedly liked it, but there was a fatal flaw. The Ajax flushed the waste into a cesspit, but it didn't have a seal. The pipe was a direct open line to the rotting sewage below. So while the poop went down, the smell came right back up. It was a mechanical marvel, but an olfactory disaster. The invention was laughed at, Harrington was mocked, and the flush toilet was forgotten for nearly 200 years. Alexander Cumming, the curve that changed the world. The man who actually saved our noses was a Scottish watchmaker named Alexander Cumming. In 1775, he patented the S-trap, or S-bend. This is the most important piece of plumbing in your house. It's that curvy bit of pipe under the toilet and the sink. The genius of the S-bend is that it traps a small amount of water in the curve after every flush. This water acts as a seal, an airtight barrier that physically blocks sewer gases, methane, hydrogen sulfide, from entering the room. Before Cumming, your toilet was a vent for the sewer. After Cumming, the shitter could finally move inside the house without making the bedroom smell like a corpse. It is a simple curve, but it is the foundation of modern civilization. The crapper fallacy, marketing genius. So, who was Thomas Crapper? He was a real person, a plumber in Victorian London, but he didn't invent the toilet. He was the Steve Jobs of the shitter. He didn't invent the technology, but he marketed the hell out of it. Crapper held patents for the floating ball cock, the thing inside the tank that stops the water, and improved the U-bend. But his real innovation was the showroom. In a Victorian society that was incredibly prudish about bodily functions, Crapper opened a shop in Chelsea with huge plate glass windows displaying his toilets on pedestals. It was scandalous. People fainted, but it worked. The slang term crapper likely didn't come from his name directly. The word crap, as chaff or residue, existed earlier. But American soldiers in World War I, seeing T. Crapper and Company stamped on the cisterns in England, brought the term going to the crapper back home, cementing his legacy.
Chapter 5. The Victorian Stench and the Earth Closet. The Great Stink of 1858. By the mid-19th century, London was the capital of the world, and it smelled like death. The population had exploded, and the newfangled water closets were flushing millions of gallons of waste not into treatment plants, but into the storm drains, which emptied directly into the River Thames. The Thames was an open sewer. In the summer of 1858, a heat wave hit. The river level dropped, exposing acres of festering human sludge on the banks to the baking sun. The result was the Great Stink. It was so bad that it stopped the government. The Houses of Parliament are right on the river. MPs were seen running from committee rooms with handkerchiefs over their faces. Benjamin Disraeli famously fled a room, retching. In a desperate attempt to keep the government functioning, they soaked the heavy curtains of Parliament in chloride of lime to filter the air. The miasma theory of the time held that bad smells caused disease. So the MPs weren't just grossed out, they thought the smell was killing them. Terrified for their lives, they passed a bill in just 18 days to fund a massive new sewer system. Nothing motivates a politician like the smell of their own voters' excrement. Bazalgette's bricks and the unforeseen. The man hired to fix it was Joseph Bazalgette. He was a civil engineering genius. He designed a system of intercepting sewers that ran parallel to the river, catching the waste before it hit the Thames and diverting it downstream. He used 318 million bricks, but his greatest act was a math error, an intentional one. When calculating the size of the pipes needed for the population of London, he did the math, and then he said, "We're only going to do this once, and there's always the unforeseen." And he doubled the diameter of the pipes. That decision saved London. If he had used the original calculation, the sewers would have overflowed in the 1960s when the population boomed. Because of his unforeseen factor, the Victorian brick sewers are still carrying the waste of London today. The Earth Closet, the eco-friendly loser. While Bazalgette was building sewers, a Reverend Henry Moule was screaming that flushing poop into water was madness. He invented the Earth Closet. It was a dry toilet. You did your business, pulled a lever, and a hopper dropped a measured amount of dry earth or ash over the poop. The earth absorbed the smell, and started composting the waste. It was brilliant. It created fertilizer. It didn't pollute the water. It was the perfect eco-toilet. So why don't we use it? Logistics. In a city of 3 million people, the earth closet system would require thousands of carts entering the city every day with fresh dirt and leaving with dirty dirt. The water closet won because it made the waste disappear instantly with a flush. We chose convenience over sustainability, and we've been dealing with the polluted water ever since. Chapter 6. The Gendered Loo and the Urinary Leash.
The invention of segregation. We think of men's and women's rooms as a natural law, but they are a Victorian invention. Before the mid-19th century, most privies were unisex or communal. As women began entering the workforce and the city centers during the Industrial Revolution, the patriarchy panicked. They needed to protect the weaker sex from the rough-and-tumble world of men. But really, it was about control. The lack of public restrooms for women acted as a urinary leash. A woman could only travel as far from her home as her bladder would allow. If she needed to go, she had to go home. This effectively kept women out of public life, politics, and business for decades. It wasn't until the ladies' lavatory became common, often demanding a fee while men's urinals were free, that women could truly inhabit the city. The rise and fall of the Parisian pissoir. Meanwhile, in Paris, men were peeing everywhere. To save the city's walls from erosion by urine, the city installed the pissoir, or Vespasienne. These were beautiful, cast-iron, open-air urinals placed right on the sidewalks. They had screens for modesty, but you could see the user's head and feet. They became icons of Paris. They were convenient, they were free, and they were exclusively for men. They also became centers for the urinary underground. They were notoriously used for cottaging, anonymous gay sex. By the mid-20th century, the pissoir was seen as a dirty relic. They were ripped out and replaced by the sanisette, those self-cleaning unisex spaceship-looking pods that cost 50 cents and spray the whole room with disinfectant after you leave. Today, only one authentic pissoir remains in Paris, on Boulevard Arago. It stands as a monument to a time when
Chapter 7. Cultural Divergence. The Squat versus the Sit.
Cultural divergence. The squat versus the sit. The squat. Anatomical perfection. Here is a hard truth. You are pooping wrong. The Western throne toilet is an anatomical disaster. When you sit at a 90-degree angle, your puborectalis muscle, which acts as a sling around your rectum to keep you continent, stays partially tight. It creates a kink in the hose, so to speak. You have to strain to push past it. When you squat, knees against chest, that muscle relaxes completely. The anorectal angle straightens out. Gravity does the work. Squatting is faster, cleaner, and causes fewer hemorrhoids. Billions of people in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East know this. They look at our porcelain chairs and wonder why we like constipation so much. The pig toilet, the ultimate recycling. Now for the grossest efficient system in history, the pig toilet. Historically used in places like Goa, India, and rural China, this was a latrine built on stilts directly over a pigsty. A chute connected the toilet hole to the pig trough. You poop, it falls. The pigs eat it. Pigs are omnivores. They are not picky. To them, human waste is just warm, pre-digested food. It is a perfect closed loop. The waste feeds the pig grows fat, the human eats the pig, the human produces waste. Travelers to Goa in the 70s tell horror stories of the pig toilet experience, squatting over the hole and hearing the snorting, squealing anticipation of the swine below, sometimes even feeling the wet snout of a jumping pig trying to get a snack before it even hits the ground. The Stoned Pig magazine in Goa even used a pig mascot named Oink to celebrate this ecological marvel. It is horrifying to the Western sensibility, but you can't deny the efficiency. The Japanese super shitter. Japan has taken the shitter to the level of art. After World War II, they moved from traditional squat toilets to Western sit toilets. But they weren't satisfied with cold porcelain. Enter the washlet. Introduced by Toto in the 80s. These are the Ferraris of the bathroom world. They have heated seats, essential in Japanese homes, which often lack central heating. They have bidet wands that extend, oscillate, and pulsate with warm water. They have warm air dryers. They also address shy bladder syndrome with the otohime, or sound princess. Japanese women were flushing the toilet constantly to mask the sound of their peeing, wasting millions of gallons of water. The sound princess is a button that plays the sound of a flushing toilet, or bird songs or waterfalls, without actually flushing, covering the noise of the act. But even the Japanese shitter has a dark side. The smart toilets are now so advanced, they are hackable. Security researchers found that the Satis smart toilet, controlled by a Bluetooth app, had a hard-coded PIN, 0000. A hacker could sit outside your house and hijack your toilet, flushing it repeatedly, blasting the bidet at full power, or opening and closing the lid like a possessed poltergeist. Beware the cyber bidet.
Chapter 8. The Portable Nightmare.
George Harding and the Blue Soup. There is no object more reviled than the porta potty. It is a hot plastic box of despair. But it is a modern miracle of chemistry. We can thank George Harding. In the 1960s, he used the new material polyethylene to create a lightweight, rigid, portable cabana. Before this, construction workers just went. The magic is in the blue soup. The liquid in the tank is a cocktail of biocides, to kill the bugs, surfactants, to break down the surface tension, and a massive amount of blue dye, to hide the visuals. When the biocide stops working, the liquid turns green. If you walk into a porta potty and the water is green, run. It means the bacteria have won. Woodstock 99, the trench mouth apocalypse. The portable shitter has a breaking point, and at Woodstock 99, we found it. Promoters cut corners. They didn't hire enough sanitation trucks. It was 100 degrees on an asphalt tarmac. The toilets filled up. Then they overflowed. Attendees, high and dehydrated, saw mud pits forming near the water stations. They thought it was just mud. They played in it. They slid in it. It wasn't mud. It was human sludge mixed with leaked water. Then the water pipes broke, creating a vacuum that sucked the sewage mud back into the drinking water supply. The result? Trench mouth. This is a WWI disease where your gums rot and bleed from bacterial infection. Kids at a music festival got a disease from the trenches of the Somme because they were literally drinking and bathing in shit. The floating tortoise of Glastonbury. At Glastonbury 2005, the enemy was rain. A flash flood hit the valley. The plastic porta potties are boats. They float. Campers watched in horror as a fleet of portable toilets, dubbed the tortoise, floated down the river of floodwater, crashing into tents and tipping over, spilling their blue and brown cargo into the campsite. It was a fecal regatta. This is why Glastonbury now uses long drops and composting toilets, heavy tanks that don't float. The Pooping Tom. The design of the porta potty tank, a direct drop into a dark void, has led to some truly disturbing what can go wrong stories. In Colorado, a man was arrested after he was found inside the tank of a portable toilet at a yoga festival. He had stripped down, climbed into the sewage, and was watching women use the toilet from below. When he was caught, he emerged covered in feces. The police dubbed him a pooping Tom. In another case, a man fell asleep in a porta potty, drunk obviously, and woke up to the sensation of movement. The toilet was being loaded onto a truck. He was trapped inside, sloshing around, while the truck drove down the highway. He couldn't get out because the door was blocked by other toilets. He was essentially kidnapped by a shitter.
To boldly go, the shitter in space. The vacuum throne. In space, no one can hear you scream, but they can definitely see your floating turd. Gravity is the engine of the terrestrial toilet. In 0G, if you use a flush toilet, the water and the waste floats up. It becomes a brown aerosol. NASA had to reinvent the shitter from scratch. The solution is suction. The space shuttle and ISS toilets are essentially vacuum cleaners for your butt. You strap yourself onto the seat with thigh restraints so you don't float away mid-push, and turn on the fan. The airflow pulls the waste away from your body and into a bag. The camera training. Here is the most humiliating fact about being an astronaut. Potty training. The opening of the space toilet is only 4 inches wide, compared to 12 to 18 inches on Earth. It has to be small to create a tight vacuum seal. Precision is mandatory. If you miss the hole, the turd escapes. To train for this, NASA has a positional trainer. It is a toilet with a camera inside the bowl, looking up. The astronaut sits on it, fully clothed, or not, and watches a monitor that shows a live feed of their own anus. They have to practice wiggling around until their alignment is perfect with the crosshairs on the screen. Imagine having passed anus alignment class on your resume. The Apollo 10 floating turd. Before the vacuum toilet, Apollo astronauts used fecal containment bags, basically a plastic bag you tape to your butt. It was a disaster. In the official transcript of Apollo 10, May 1969, we have this exchange between Commander Tom Stafford and pilot Gene Cernan. Stafford, give me a napkin quick. There's a turd floating through the air. I didn't do it. It ain't one of mine. I don't think it's one of mine. Mine was a little more sticky than that. Throw that away. This is history. While orbiting the moon, America's finest heroes were arguing about who owned the floating poop. It is the most human moment in spaceflight history. The diaper return. The space toilet breaks. A lot. It is a complex machine with fans, separators, and acid dispensers. In 2021, the toilet on the SpaceX Crew Dragon broke. A tube came unglued and leaked urine under the floorboards. NASA determined it was unsafe to use. So, for the 20-hour journey home, the astronauts had to wear maximum absorbency garments. That's NASA speak for diapers. They re-entered the atmosphere, hitting 5 Gs, while sitting in their own potential waste.
Explosive events and dangerous gases. The Ottawa sewer blast. We think of sewers as passive pipes, but they are chemical reactors. They generate methane. In 1929, Ottawa, Canada learned this the hard way. People were dumping industrial waste, gasoline and oil, into the sewers. It mixed with the methane. A spark, maybe a streetcar, maybe a match, lit the fuse. Boom! A chain reaction of explosions ripped through the city. It didn't just blow up the streets, it blew up the plumbing. The blast wave traveled up the sewer connections into houses. Toilets were blown off the floor. Manhole covers were launched into the sky like tiddlywinks. It was a literal shitstorm. The Barcelona blowout. This isn't ancient history. In 2014, a woman in Barcelona went to the bathroom in a bar. The sewer system had backed up with methane. The bathroom was unvented. She sat down. She flipped the light switch. The spark from the switch ignited the gas. The toilet exploded beneath her. She suffered severe burns to her legs and buttocks. It gives a whole new meaning to explosive diarrhea.
The sexual ecology of the public shitter. The tea room trade. The public shitter has always had a double life. It is a place for waste, but it is also a place for illicit intimacy. In the mid-20th century, before gay rights, the public restroom was one of the few places men could meet. This was known as the tea room trade in the U.S. or cottaging in the U.K. because the public toilets looked like little cottages. Sociologist Lord Humphreys wrote a famous and ethically dubious book about it. He found that the men meeting for anonymous sex in restrooms weren't just gay men. Many were married, conservative men with families, leading double lives. The shitter was a zone of exception, a place where identities were suspended. The architecture of the stall evolved to facilitate or hinder this. The glory hole is a piece of shitter folklore. But look at the American bathroom stall. The huge gaps in the doors. The walls that end a foot off the floor. The harsh lighting. This is hostile architecture. It is designed to make you feel watched, to prevent sex, drug use, or sleeping. Compare that to a European stall, which is a private room. The American shitter is designed for surveillance. The European shitter is designed for dignity.
The lexicon of the loo. We have more words for the shitter than the Eskimos have for snow. It reflects our obsession and our shame. The eponyms. The John, after John Harrington, though some say it's just a generic name like Jack. The Crapper, after Thomas Crapper. The Jerry, a chamber pot, possibly from Jeroboam or a German helmet. The British/Australian slang. Dunny, Australian, from Dunnikin, dunghouse. Thunderbox, the outhouse, because of the acoustics. The Bog, British, from bog house, privy over a swamp. The Kazi, British Army slang, from the Swahili or Arabic for toilet. Pointing Percy at the porcelain, urinating. Dropping the kids off at the pool, pooping. Technicolor yawn, vomiting. The poopfamisms. I need to see a man about a horse. Download a brown load. Baking a loaf. Touching cloth. The turtle head is poking out. We use humor to mask the taboo. We can't just say, I am going to excrete waste. We have to turn it into a joke, a mission, or a euphemism.
Conclusion. The throne endures. We have traveled from the marble benches of Rome to the plastic blue boxes of Glastonbury. We have seen kings wiped by nobles and astronauts wearing diapers. The history of the shitter is the history of human denial. We try to hide it. We build walls around it. We invent S-bends to trap the smell and vacuum pumps to hide the gravity. But the shitter is the great leveler. You can be the CEO of Amazon or a gong farmer in 1300 London. When the urge strikes, you are just a mammal looking for a hole. Technology will change. We might one day teleport our waste out of our colons. Star Trek never addresses this. But for now, we are bound to the shitter. So the next time you sit on your porcelain throne, scrolling through your phone, take a moment to appreciate the thousands of years of engineering, failure, and explosions that allowed you to poop in peace. And please, for the love of God, don't throw your wet wipes in the toilet. Bazalgette's brick sewers can't handle them.
Well, the party's almost over, friends, and it's time to make it clear. Got a new name for those critters that we all hold so dear. So listen up now, all you folks from the mountains to the city. Don't you call them critters anymore, you call them critter shitters. That's right, critter shitters. Y'all have a good night now.